Hi, this is Dr. Emily Park with your Functional Health Minute for today. Next, I would like to go over another advanced functional medicine test that I do very commonly, and that's a stool study test. And there are many different companies that offer stool studies. There are three that I've used over the years, and I'm going to show you example reports from each of the three. They give me about 90% the same information, but there are just a few differences of why I would order one test over another. So let's get started. So the first stool report is from a company called Jehovah, and they give a lovely summary page, which I really like. And then there's several pages of data behind this. But what I like is it's very clear in the boxes, like, do you have an infection or not? If there is an infection, a parasite, a bacterial infection, it's going to show up here. And then it also gives us markers for inflammation. And there's several different markers for inflammation. In this example, this person just has an issue with something called secretory IgA, which is part of the immune system that lines the GI tract and the respiratory tract, your mucosal immune system. But there are other inflammation markers that get reported with the test too. For example, like calprotectin that shows up with inflammatory bowel disease, in other words, like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease like that. Then next, they give us a bunch of information about insufficiency. So insufficiency is relating to digestion, like how efficient is your digestion. So we get markers for how you're doing digesting proteins, fat, and carbohydrates, which can be really, really valuable and tell us if you potentially would need digestive enzyme support or potentially more stomach acid support with something like HCl, or do you potentially need more bile acid support with some ox bile salts and so on. So that's a really valuable part as well. And then the imbalance section tells us if there's, bacteria that are out of balance. So besides, we already, would get infection data. This is not infection. This would be, is there a dysbiosis, meaning an overgrowth of something that, is in amounts that is potentially symptom causing and could really, cause issues if it continues to grow. That would be considered a dysbiosis. And if that's going on, that will show up in this box here. And then it's also reported your, commensal bacteria or your good healthy bacteria. How do you measure up compared to, your cohort, meaning like other, patients of your same sex and age and whatnot. And so it gives you an idea of your good gut microbiome as well. So, this is a pretty comprehensive test, and there's several, as I was mentioning earlier, there's several pages of actual, data and numbers, that your functional medicine practitioner will go over with you. And they do actually, on the last, one of the last pages, they do actually give you a culture as to what is, if there's anything, overgrown, and even your regular good gut bacteria, how does that grow out on a culture? So that is company number one. Company number two is Doctors Data. I've also been using them for years, and they report very similar categories, it just in a slightly different format, but we still get the same good information about good gut bacteria. We get information about, dysbiosis or, potentially overgrown bacteria. And of course, not just bacteria, this includes yeast too. We also get information, obviously, if there's a parasite or an infection. We get information about digestion. We get information about inflammation. And we also get, basic things like pH of the stool. Is there blood in the stool? We get that on all of the tests that we do. The reporting just looks, slightly different. And then the third company is Diagnostic Solutions, and it's something called a GI map. And this utilizes what's called PCR technology. It is the most kind of up-to-date technology for detecting DNA. And so this report is a little different because it does give you actual numbers of, bacterial counts or viral counts or parasitic counts or yeast. So it gives all of that. And it does a couple extra special things. Like it really gets into the details if you do have, for example, H. pylori. In this example, this person does not have H. pylori. But if you did, it would, kind of give you some of the virulence factors, meaning like how difficult is it to kill. And then at the end of the report, we even would give you some DNA data on what potential, antibiotics, it would be susceptible to if it was there, which is really, really helpful. stool. But we still get information on, are there overgrowths or dysbiotic bacteria? And there's two categories, just, dysbiosis, and the other category is, are there potential autoimmune triggers? So I like that it's broken down into that category. And then, of course, it does report, yeast, like all the other stool studies. And then it reports a couple of viruses as well, and also gives information on inflammation and digestion also. So those are the areas that I'm really looking at when I order a stool study. So who needs a stool study? Obviously, it would be great, as a screening test for everybody. But honestly, if you've got GI symptoms of any kind, and that includes, gas, bloating, acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain, if there's any GI symptoms of any kind, in functional medicine, of course, we're doing other things first, like we're, having you change your diet if there's some interventions there, doing a food elimination with reintroduction to see if there's food sensitivities, and there's testing we can do for that as well, which I'll get to in future health minutes. But and of course, we're looking at nutrient deficiencies and toxins and chronic infections, and the influence of stress and sleep. It all can influence the gut. So we're looking at all of those factors. But a stool study is, one of the cornerstones to doing a GI workup and investigation in functional medicine. So I hope this helps explain a little bit about stool studies. This is Dr. Emily Park with your Functional Health Minute for today.